Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, pleasure being here. And the subject given to me is about how innovation can change the scenario which we already have actually. And when discussing the economic future of our country, the culture of innovation is so important for foreseeing the building of new India, and the entire future of our country is dependent on this particular thought. And if I can use the word, I brought some data, I brought some numbers for those who are interested in numbers, and the ones who are not interested in numbers, I can just go with the flow. When we think about India, in my thought process, I generally tend to go back to 2014. So for me, 2014 was a landmark year to bring this shift. So pre-2014 and post-2014 scenario is what I constantly end up comparing in my thought process. And that comparison becomes important because at the time when we came to government, we made certain promises. And when we made certain promises, whether we've delivered on those promises or not, and whether we've worked to deliver on those promises or not, became always a question in our minds. And whenever I think of those times, the one important milestone for the country was 2014. That's the time when, before Prime Minister Modi took over as the Prime Minister of this country, with all your support, he became the Prime Minister. And post-2014, when he held the reins and how he ran the government, and this year especially becomes important because this is the important year in which India is celebrating Amrit Mahotsav and the beginning of Amrit Kal, that is completing 75 years of India's independence and reassessing ourselves, reviewing our status, whether we have achieved the dreams of our forefathers or what work is left out for us to achieve, and where we want India to be when India completes 100 years. And keeping this thought process in mind, the milestone year of 2023 becomes absolutely imperative like 2014. So we have to take stock of our economic progress and progress on every other front, and of course the downsides which we have really not been able to achieve. And when we take stock of things, there has to be a comparative unit, and that comparative unit in my mind, for right or for wrong reason, happens to be 2014. And what happened at that time, because I remember people like me came into politics, we were not interested in politics, were ordinary citizens of this country doing our duty as best with our abilities as one could. But 2010 onwards, the atmosphere was so gloomy and so terrible that even people like us started to become aware of where the pitfalls were. And at that point in time, this constant question that does India deserve this came from a background where family constantly taught its children what freedom struggle was all about, how much sacrifices were made, how people struggled and what they wanted. Now imagine what kind of India would people like young people, 23-year-old, I mean my children will be older than that age today, 23-year-old Bhagat Singh, who would have died and sacrificed everything for the freedom of this nation. What would his dreams be like? What would be the dreams of the oldest woman who stood up against the British to get freedom for our country? What would be the dreams of people who just remained in jail even post-independence because certain sentences were awarded to them when the British ruled the country, but they remained in jail even after we got independence. 25,000 plus INS soldiers who died for this country and their names are not recorded. Now, when those questions crop up in the mind, the kind of upheaval that it can cause to any decent person, any thinking person would be immense. And it is at that point in time we decided to participate politically and came to power in 2014. And certain numbers, for example, at that point in time, India, as we've all got used to our status of being fifth largest economy and third largest in PPP, was a status of fragile 5. Now imagine when you're on those shaky visits, we are all, mocking our neighbors sometimes. Sometimes we are, taking pity. But that could have been our situation as well, because in 2014, we were amongst fragile 5. So this journey from fragile 5 to top 5, I'm sure it's not been easy, which all of you would appreciate. All of you would think that there were tremendous wrongs happening at that time, and tremendous corrections have happened in these years to bring it to top 5. And I'm sure our potential is far greater, and we are yet to achieve our potential. For achieving our potential, we have to continue to work and make promise to each one of us that together, collectively, we stand for one India, we stand for great India, and we shall put in all our best efforts to make it greater still. There is one saying which says, Pratyaksham kim pramanam, which means Pratyaksh is what you can see, what you visualize. So whatever you see doesn't require any evidence, because your eyes are the best evidence. Your sense and sensibility, what you see, is the best evidence. And in this case, I would like to take you to the time, which was 2019, 20, 2021, 22, the period of COVID, the pandemic. The entire world is still recovering from its after effects. But what was that time like when we could not really see each other, and everybody thought retail business is over once for all, when people did not know how we shall ever be able to commute and communicate by physically meeting each other, but we did commute and we did communicate with each other, and obituary of India and Indian economy had actually been written off. We'd actually been written off at that point in time, that how will a country like India vaccinate its people? And I still remember those days, that certain names would be cropped up through political methodologies and of course amplifying it through media, when people would say, oh, X brand is better and Y brand vaccines should be brought, and these are BJP vaccines, don't consume it, don't use it. Where are the vaccine of our bachas, our children? Those kinds of things. But lo and behold, India provided vaccines for 2.2 billion doses for all its people. We vaccinated all our people. And with this vaccination process, India earned the awe and respect which it deserves rightfully. But I must add to this that we also earned the of many, because when you succeed and you succeed against the odds, there will be a lot of jealousies which you invoke. And that's what has happened to us Indians as well, that we have progressed, we've done well, and we have showcased to the world that every challenge will be met in the eye by this resilient India, not just in the form of economy, but the confidence this youth exudes, the hard work this youth is capable of, the ability which Indians exhibit. We shall be able to take over all the challenges and convert them into opportunities. And COVID period, actually, we innovated so much. We worked so differently that we created startup ecosystem, which is already created, but it gave a boost to our startup ecosystem. And today, India has the third largest startup ecosystem with 80,000 startups. With 80,000 startups and 3,000 deep science startups. And these deep science startups, I'm just reminded of one, which is like on the map for everyone to see. Vikram S, the Sky Roots. This startup, the first of its kind, launched a private rocket into the space. No, tell me honestly, could anyone imagine this in 2014, that India can have a startup which will have a private rocketing system? Could you think of it? Answer to my mind is no, but yes, we've done it. It's for everyone to see. So pratyaksham kim pramanam. So it's for everyone to see that India's done it, and we are pretty good at it. When we were struggling with oxygen, I mean, Delta wave was really, really terrible for all of us, and oxygen became a challenge. Not because India did not produce oxygen. We had all the machinations for production of oxygen, because wherever we are separating ore from the metal, iron, oxygen is a byproduct. But all that was happening in the eastern part of India. And all the congested cities where these hospitalization processes and some ruckus-creating governments were running happened to be in north of India, which demanded the oxygen, the entire oxygen which India was producing before COVID. Entire LMO was being asked for by one government, and Delhi government asked for the entire LMO requisition, with the whole country needed, only city of Delhi needed. And within that framework, we had to think and create those methods that you had to reinvent your methods of working. You had to reinvent the method of transporting, and everybody here would agree with me that you can't really cart an oxygen in a basket or a jhola, you know. You need special machinations to cart it. And whether it was getting cryogenic tankers from the Middle East, or it was getting the shiploads from other nations, India did it. Or using our Air Force, railways, everything. We used every method of bringing oxygen from whichever part to tide over that particular phase. Come to think of it, I mean, none of us are used to wearing masks in our normal life. None of us. Even today, when you have to travel to certain countries where people are still using masks, it's pretty painful because we are not used to it. And I very proudly exhibit, you know, how many doses. So I came across one person, I wouldn't name him, but he said, you know, it seems I've got addicted to the vaccination. This is my 5th dose. I said, are you diabetic? No, I'm not. I said, do you have any other serious ailment? He says, no. It's just that the dose I took every 3 months, 4 months, I have to take some new version of the same dose. So I laughed and I said, look, I'm all right, and I've taken 2 doses, and that's what Indian vaccines are all about. So innovation, and innovation with scientific know-how in the best technology available. That's what we produced, and that's how good we are. Learn to take pride in that. And not just vaccination, the method of vaccination. When you have to give 2.2 billion doses, it just doesn't happen overnight. And I know how much struggle many people who have higher GDP per capita than us, who are so-called developing countries, are struggling with the method of vaccinating not even 1/4, but less than that population. They're struggling as to how names have to be tabulated, how certificates need to be issued, how people need to be identified, how super seniors need to be identified, how those things have to happen. But one method, CoWIN app. CoWIN did it all. That platform, every Indian got tabulated that this Indian's been given a vaccine on such and such date, will be given on such and such date. The Prime Minister of India got the same vaccine as you and me. Everybody got the same vaccine. So this also speaks about inclusion in the society. This speaks about the kind of dreams our ancestors would have possessed when they would have got freedom for this country. I believe there is a time limit, and that time is getting up. But all I can say is the startup ecosystem, whether it's finances or it's about three methods which government has adopted mainly. That is to make credit available where it is needed by the startup ecosystem, hand-holding the young people who need to innovate, and also keeping the government out of the business of doing business. So business needs to be done by the people who do business, and government simply needs to provide an ecosystem where businesses can flourish. And this includes 10 lakh crore being kept for our infrastructure development. So you build roads, you provide people the ability, whether it's electricity, water, and other such systems, so that everybody else can innovate, whether it's patents, it's trademarks, it's copyrights. Everything has gone multifold, not just double, but triple, many times over. It has gone forward. So pratyaksham kim pramanam. Whatever is the scenario today is able to showcase what India and Indian innovation is all about, giving the right atmosphere. Numbers are too many numbers in every field, so I'm not going to quote. Thank you very much. With these words, Jai Hind.